Venus and Star Blessings, welcome back everybody. Today I want to talk about Mars in Capricorn, which is where Mars is transiting at the moment. There's actually so much to talk about because of the lead up of things that are actually coming up, which is going to be Mars in Aquarius, conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, and Venus is going to catch up to them as well. That is later on in the month of February, so I'm going to come back and talk about that. But because there's always overlays of things going on, sometimes it can be quite challenging just to zone in on one particular thing, because nothing is really ever working in isolation. But nevertheless, I do want to try and bring a specific focus to Mars in Capricorn. First of all, Mars in Capricorn is said to be its exalted position. And it really happens to be quite a powerful place for Mars. Normally, we would think Mars in Scorpio and Mars in Aries, which are its rulership positions, are the most powerful. They are extremely powerful in those signs. There's no question about that. But there's something about the nature of Mars that really, in Capricorn that is, that really helps its desires, focus, willpower, goals, and drives and actions. Because Mars is the nature of war, it corresponds to war. It is an archetypal energy that really does speak to conflict, essentially. So place Mars in Saturn's sign and in Capricorn, which is said to be its exalted position, it basically cools Mars down quite a bit. Mars is a very hot-headed type of energy, right? It is a nocturnal planet, and actually for that reason, its rulership in Scorpio is probably more, well, it's certainly more tamed to an extent. Scorpio being, a water sign, and nocturnal for that matter. So Mars in Capricorn. Capricorn is an earth feminine sign ruled by Saturn. And the position of exaltation, which corresponds to traditional astrology relative to what's called essential dignities and debilities, which is a system that really we should be paying attention to, regardless of what level of astrology we are studying. For instance, in evolutionary astrology, there really isn't a particular focus of a planet being in rulership or otherwise, but we can take the evolutionary teachings of what it means to have Mars in a particular sign and also add to that, well, is Mars in detriment here? Is Mars exalted? Is Mars in fall? And so forth, because that's going to add another extra layer for us to help us understand how that Mars energy is being projected, embodied, lived, and experienced. So the exaltation position is the second best position to have a planet in. The first position, of course, is rulership. But there are nuances, such as in the case of Mars in Capricorn. Mars in Capricorn, I would have to say, is a much better placement than Mars in Aries. Now, some people might not like that who have Mars in Aries, but it's not about what we like or don't like. We're just simply talking about the nature of a particular planet archetype and how it might operate and manifest to its best capability. In Aries, it is completely impulsive, for instance. It is the ultimate war signature. In Capricorn, because it's a Saturn-ruled sign, Saturn being a cold and dry planet, it cools Mars right down. It takes that hot-headed energy away. It enables an individual to really consider its course of action. You know, it's not hasty and impulsive. It's very, very reflective and considerate. Now, that consideration may have ulterior motives to it, for sure. Any planet can have ulterior motives, or any sign for that matter. But the point being that when Mars is in Capricorn, when it's operating, let's just say, through somebody who's conscious and aware to a certain extent, then that Mars will really aid that individual in their climb up the mountain, as it were, which is the goat climbing up the mountain. So the other definition of a planet in exaltation, which comes from ancient medieval astrology, is to say that if a planet in rulership is the king, which it is, then a planet in exaltation is basically the king's right-hand man. So a planet in exaltation has extraordinary power, because it is taking direction from the king, as it were, but it has tremendous power and agency to make a lot of decisions, a lot of executive decisions. And executive is a great word for Capricorn as well. So first of all, you know, have a look at where Mars is transiting in your own chart, of course. And you may have Mars in Capricorn, so this will be a Mars return for you. I have Mars in Capricorn, so when I speak to this, I really speak to it not only from theory, but also having lived my whole life with Mars in Capricorn. I know what I'm capable of accomplishing or achieving or executing or directing my life towards with Mars in Capricorn. It is really a great position. I'm very grateful that I have Mars in Capricorn, actually. And if you are one of those people, you know, it's a really good place to have Mars. So it has that power of the king's right-hand man, as it were, so it can execute a lot of its own decisions and so forth. It gets cooled right down because it's a Saturn-ruled sign. It has that grounding earthiness of Capricorn, which when you put Mars energy with Capricorn, it's actually a beautiful and powerful combination at best when it's operating with some awareness and consciousness and direction, because Mars being, first of all, it's our own personal desires. It's the gas in the tank. You know, it's how we actually go after, as it were, what we want, what we need, what we want to create. It's the energy that evokes our sense of drive and passion and how we're going to execute, you know, this goal and that project and so forth. And Capricorn brings in the stability, the earthiness, the discipline that's required, the commitment that's required. So bringing those two energies together, you can see just from those key words that Mars in Capricorn is able to accomplish quite a lot because of the earthiness of Capricorn and because of the desire of Mars. So those are just some basic themes and key words for Mars in Capricorn, period, whether it's, you know, Mars transiting in Capricorn or whether it's that you have Mars natally in Capricorn. So the exaltation position, in short, is a very, very powerful position for Mars to be in. Now, the next level to this that I think we need to consider, Mars is going to make a lot of aspects to different planets throughout its journey in the sign of Capricorn till, I think it's mid-February, somewhere around there, and then it goes into Aquarius. So we've got, you know, a few weeks of this left, or a couple of weeks, or no, a few weeks, because it's only the 13th of January. Now, Mars has been invisible since September of 2023, and I have spoken about this on numerous occasions. And I've recently started studying some material with Rumen Kolev, who's the wizard and genius that I've brought on my channel on 2 separate occasions. There's 2 videos there that I really encourage you to watch. They are long, and you do need to pay attention and focus, especially if you have no background in Babylonian ancient astrology, and certainly with his program as well, which is incredibly unique, and no one has created an astrology program like him. One of his great passions and focuses is on an area in astrology called helical phases, which is an ancient practice and literal observation of the sky that the ancients would do just with their physical eyes. And in short, helical phases simply refers to a planet's visibility and invisibility, appearance and disappearance, and that occurs with both planets and stars. So with the very little that I know at this point, as far as Rumen's teachings are concerned, because his teachings are very, I have to say, you really have to, in a very big way, put aside everything you know about astrology, as it were, and you have to just step into a new field with new eyes. It's just a very, it's another level altogether. I've studied astrology for 26 years, and I've studied ancient medieval astrology, I've studied evolutionary astrology, I've studied modern traditional psychological astrology, I've studied esoteric astrology. And when I say studied, I mean studied. Like I've read, I've researched, I've looked at probably thousands of charts, for a very long time. And stepping into Rumen's teachings, I have to say, not all of it, but a lot of it has been very challenging to adapt into my mind. It's just a very different way of understanding things, the science, God's language. But getting back to helical phases, which is very important for this subject today, which is Mars in Capricorn. According to Rumen, and certainly just in the very short interim where I have started to pay attention to helical phases, I can see the power and I can witness the truth of the very little that I've learned from him up to this point. That is that when a planet is invisible or a planet is visible, there are huge implications from a collective level and certainly from an individual level as well. With Venus being invisible and visible, I have a really solid understanding of that, and I can work with that from a collective perspective and from an individual perspective. Predominantly, I guess that's because I did I think it was a 5 or 6 hour webinar with Rumen on Venus's helical phases. So that's given me a really solid understanding of Venus's invisibility and visibility and what the implications of that are. And I guess that's really just complemented my journey through working with the Venus star point, which is a Sun-Venus conjunction that occurs every 9.5 months, which speaks to her transition from evening star to morning star, evening star to morning star. So, I worked really intensely with developing and expanding my understanding and wisdom of this Venus star point for around about 3 years, and then came in the Babylonian teachings and astrology. So I feel, first of all, I feel so grateful and so blessed that the gods and goddesses and the divine source creation to all things has brought these teachings and wisdoms into my consciousness, into my field, where I've been able to learn and explore and understand and have such a deep passion and desire behind it to do so. So Mars being invisible has been a huge player in what's been happening in the Middle East. There are no two ways about it. Mars being invisible there's so many complex layers to it, and Rumen would be the one that would do justice to the complexity of those teachings, but my sense of it is that Mars being invisible really does imply that there are hidden motives and hidden agendas, and people's actions are hidden. People's motives are hidden. It's just it's a logical thought process, really, when you think about it. When something is visible, doesn't matter what it is, we're talking about a planet right now, but when something is visible, you can see it, right? You literally can see it, which gives you a very distinctive perspective, let's say. Sometimes a very biased or prejudiced or subjective perspective. Quite often, actually, that is the case, but in any case, it gives you a visual perspective of whatever it is you are looking at, provided it is visible. When something is invisible, obviously it's invisible. You cannot see it. So what is it that you can't see? In this case, we're talking about Mars. You can't see the planet Mars in the sky. We haven't been able to see it since September of 2023. Well, what is the implication around that? Well, what does Mars represent? This is, the practice and study of astrology, understanding the archetypes, the planets, the stars, the symbolism, the mythology. Mars speaks to our personal desires, our motivations, our actions. So when you can't see somebody's actions and somebody's personal desires and motivations and what's driving them, well, that could be a problem, because you don't know what their intentions are. You don't know where they're coming from. There's something obscured, hidden about the nature of their Mars intentions, just to put it very, very simply. And by the way, on that point, relative to Mars being invisible and how I feel it's being a big player in the matters of the Middle East, I want to say that I always think about and always send my love to our brothers and sisters in the Middle East, all of them. That includes Jewish communities as well, okay? For you guys out there who perhaps have a particular perspective on my take on this, and that's fine. My take is my take. I'm entitled to my personal opinion, although I rarely bring my personal opinion through these videos. I try to remain as objective as possible. However, having said that, I will speak to the matter of sending love to what I consider my brothers and sisters in the Middle East, and particularly the Palestinians, because of the sheer courage that they have. It is ineffable, undeniable, the courage these souls have. This beautiful ancient culture. Anyway, I just want to say that. So getting back to Mars. Now, let me actually bring up a chart to create some visuals for us, because there are some really interesting things going on. So this chart is for, it's for the 28th of January. So let's just go back to the present moment. So there's Mars at 6 degrees and 18 minutes of Capricorn. So it's been there about a week or so. And as it transits through Capricorn, it's obviously going to pick up some aspects of different planets, and some will be more important than others. And maybe all of them will be important in the collective sphere of things, let's say. First of all, I'd like us to reflect on and think about the fact that not only is Mars exalted in Capricorn, which is one of its highest placements, it is also the ruler to the North Node, the transiting North Node. And I think given we are going to experience the rest of 2024, so all of 2024, because we've only just stepped into 2024, the nodes will remain in Aries Libra throughout the rest of this year. So Mars in Capricorn being the ruler of the North Node, his journey at the moment in the sign of Capricorn is really significant in our own personal path of growth and evolution and development that is connected to our motivations, desires, and course of actions that we take from the point of view of how we are evolving towards the North Node. And this includes, you know, from a collective perspective, this is really speaking to very significant changes and transitions happening on the earth, and for the most part coming through conflict, right? And conflict can be horrendous and horrific because it creates war and things of that nature. And the cataclysmic nature of those events, you know, contain a lot of different things like trauma and loss and really terrible things, as we are seeing, you know, live streaming, being video recorded. As I said in my previous video, in what kind of reality within a humanity that has respect and reverence for not only the divinity and source to all creation of things, but to humanity itself. In what right consciousness does a collective human family sit by and watch what I consider a genocide? Watching it live streaming, being filmed. It's incomprehensible, frankly. Anyway, getting back to this Mars. So because we are still very much in this North Node, South Node axis of Aries, Libra, related to the Moon's nodes, and it pointing to and speaking to our personal development and evolution and growth through these nodes. Of course, Aries is the archetype that corresponds to war as well, because its planetary ruler is Mars. So hence we are seeing these components highly amplified in cataclysmic events or horrific events and so forth. But I guess perhaps at a personal level, for a lot of people on the earth plane, it is revolved around, I feel, subjects that have to do with being courageous. If we think about a consensus reality, which is programmed for the most part, and we all have our conditioned imprints coming into this lifetime, and then having further conditioned imprints that rise out of the family, location, society, etc., that we were born into. And the consensus reality, which is about 80–85% of the population on the planet, is defined by Saturn, Saturn's world, at that external personality level. Then we are all subject to a particular narrative that everyone just kind of follows, right? So the North Node in Aries has a lot of different meanings to it, but one particular meaning I feel that is really, really important, especially given what has been transpiring on the earth and what is still transpiring, really has to do with being courageous to maybe step into something that's not the norm, that's outside of the consensus reality. It does take a lot of courage to do that, because most people are conditioned and programmed. So when you step outside of the programming and the conditioning, you have to have courage. Otherwise, how can you do it? So Mars in Capricorn, being the ruler of the North Node, I think is really speaking to our own ability to be courageous and to give really careful consideration to the actions that we are putting out there, the matters that we are addressing, connecting to, speaking to, taking action towards, things like that. Because what's going to happen when Mars gets to 19, actually it'll be 17 degrees because the nodes would have moved back to 17 degrees, and that happens 28th of January. So towards the end of this month, in about 2 weeks' time, Mars is going to square the nodes. And that's quite a pivotal, turning point, if you like. It is, Mars, in other words, for the next few weeks, has so much to do and is so connected with our life direction because of the nodes being in Aries Libra till the end of this year. And then when Mars gets to, let me think, there's some other thought there that I had and it's just evaded my mind. We'll see if it comes back. So whatever we are inclined to act upon with Mars in Capricorn over the next few weeks is very significant and is not only relevant for the time that Mars is in Capricorn, is essentially what I'm trying to say, because Mars will square the nodes towards the end of the month. And by the way, this is really super interesting. And so I'm going to bring in something called midpoints. Now, midpoints, again, they don't often get spoken about, particularly in mainstream astrology, but midpoints is a really powerful field in astrology that I encourage everyone to pay attention to, because a midpoint will bring in a layer to the story that otherwise would be missed, that could be absolutely crucial. And I found a midpoint that is very crucial when Mars actually squares the nodes, which is on the 28th of January or 27th of January in the Northern Hemisphere. What appears to be the case is that the midpoint between Mars and the North Node is actually Saturn. And Saturn is the planet that rules the sign that Mars is in. So, the nodes really do speak to transitions and changes and endings of things and new beginnings and evolutionary processes that we go through. And Saturn, of course, is the Lord of time, the Lord of karma, the Lord of many other things as well. So it feels like there's a karmic implication here of, our actions speaking to something much further in the future, which is why we need to be really considerate and conscious of the types of actions we are taking at this point in time with Mars in Capricorn, because it speaks to a trajectory further on down the track. It's like sowing particular seeds that will have consequences arise, in the near future. And further to that, the eclipses that take place this year, just about all of them except one, are in Aries Libra, which is Mars's sign. Mars rules Aries. So can you see the story unfolding here? It's Mars is transiting through Capricorn. If you just looked at that alone, you would just stick with some very basic core principles or key words about Mars in Capricorn being an exalted position and helping you, focus on the reality that you are co-creating and constructing and so forth, sure. But there's much bigger implications here because of the square to the nodes, because Saturn is at the midpoint of North Node Mars when Mars squares the North Node, because we are having a series of Aries, Libra, solar and lunar eclipses this year, and lunar and solar eclipses, particularly solar eclipses, can bring up huge turning points and changes, or cataclysmic events as well, you know, things that are just beyond our control, because a solar eclipse is bringing up something very, very deep that's buried in the, you know, unconscious components of us. So, you know, about 80% of our behavior is actually driven by the unconscious components within us. That's why sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we might think, why did I do that? You know, I never imagined myself doing that. Now, sometimes that can be a wonderful thing, that can be very, you know, beneficial for your growth and development. And sometimes that can be a thing that corresponds more to self-undoing, as it were. So we do need to really be very careful with our course of actions while Mars is in Capricorn. Further to that, because Mars is invisible, has been since September of 2023, Mars will gain its visibility. Well, it is, okay, here's one thing that we need to address that's really important. A planet's appearance and disappearance is based on latitude. In other words, it's based on your exact location. So when a planet becomes visible in Melbourne, Australia, it is not necessarily going to be the case for New York, USA. In most cases, it won't be. So there is that factor involved. I've only looked at 2 places because otherwise I would be, you know, spending hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and months, you know, seeing when Mars becomes visible in this state or in this country or in that state, etc. Obviously, I can't do that, but that's the beauty of Ruhman's program, which is this one here. Let me just close this for a moment. So this is Ruhman's program, and this is a chart for, let me see, 20th of March. This is for New York, set for New York. And Mars, in Melbourne, Australia, Mars becomes visible on the 17th of January, right? Which is just a few days away. So for people living in the Southern Hemisphere and specifically in Melbourne, Mars becomes visible. And that happens while, let's just actually have a quick look at something before I make that comment. So let me just quickly evaluate something here. Yeah, just wanting to double check. So Mars becomes visible in Melbourne while Mars is in Capricorn. So for those of you living here, then you'll be working with Mars in Capricorn for half of its journey, let's say. It becomes visible for you, and that will change the dynamics of the Mars factors and Mars matters in your life. And there will be something seen that has been unseen, if you like, you know, since September of 2023. In New York, USA, however, Mars doesn't become visible until this day here, which is March 20. Look at how much difference there is there, right? One in Melbourne, Australia, becomes visible on the 17th of January, and in New York, it's like 2 months later. So you see, sometimes there can be such a, you know, a vast difference of timing. And this is an important matter when it comes to the appearance and disappearance of planets, which is called helical phases. But as far as I understand, it is only Ruhman's program that calculates this accurately. And this is based on what he has said, which I trust completely. There are other programs that try to calculate the helical phases, and when I've compared one to Ruhman's, it's not correct. So that's, you know, that's something that each of us needs to explore personally, you know, and that's something that you must invest in, because it is an investment. You know, first of all, you need to invest in this program, you know, which is highly worth it. You know, if you really want to deepen your astrological knowledge and wisdom and so forth. But, you know, that's up to each person. So because of that, and because there are so many variables involved in when a planet becomes visible or invisible based on latitude, I cannot offer an answer to where everybody lives, because I'd be sitting here all day doing that, right? So I'm just picking New York because it's one of my favorite cities in the world. And I've got a lot of my followers, I know a lot of you are from the US. So I guess perhaps those of you that are pretty close to New York, you can kind of assume that, well, the appearance of Mars will be around about this date here. And again, you know, this is an important matter because for you guys in New York, USA, whilst Mars is transiting in Capricorn, it won't be visible. So it has that invisibility factor still playing out, which to me says that a lot of what people will be motivated and driven in acting towards and their, you know, personal desires, a lot of that may still be, you know, just very hidden, or there's a strong unconscious component to it still, you know, unable to see. Or from a practical, you know, everyday mundane kind of level, there might be a frustration because you are planning towards this or planning towards that, or, you know, trying to create this plan and, you know, trying to establish certain things. And there may be an inability to really see how that's going to actualize, how it's going to manifest. And what I would say is, well, while Mars is invisible, you won't. So be patient. And, you know, patience is it's a virtue. And that is one of the gifts, actually, of Mars in Capricorn. It gives us the patience and the perseverance to exercise our strength, our power, our courage, our willpower towards what we are trying to create with patience and perseverance. That's, you know, literally one of the greatest things of Mars in Capricorn. It pays off when you persevere and when you have patience towards things that you are trying to create in your life, basically. And that's probably one of the greatest teachings or gifts that Mars offers us in Capricorn, right? So those are really the main key points that I wanted to address today. And as I said, you know, come February, January and February are really phenomenal months. Months of planetary alignments that we have never lived in our lifetime, and certain alignments haven't occurred for hundreds and hundreds of years. So that, you know, this is, I think 2024 is going to be a lot more dynamic, explosive, intense, dark as well, and some great transitions and things will come as well. So it'll be, you know, both ends of the spectrum, but in really heightened, like being on steroids kind of thing, levels, right? So what happens is, which, as I said, I'm going to come back and speak to this, but let's just have a quick look. So, at the moment, anyway, Mars is sextile Saturn, so that's a favorable aspect. That happens, what's the date there? 14th of January. So that's pretty much already been taking place, hasn't it? So around the new moon, just before the new moon, the sextile between Mars and Saturn has been active. Now, these aspects, because Mars is a pretty fast-moving body, you know, these aspects are only in play for a day or 15 hours or 30 hours, or, you know, depending on the planet and so forth, right? So they're quick little passages, but sometimes they can be the very activation point that can really help in this story of Mars in Capricorn as it's unfolding for each of us individually. So if you can track the dates and, you know, track where Mars is moving in your chart, it might be worth just making a note. You know, Mars is sextile Saturn on, you know, during the 11th and 12th of January, you know, so that might just be a little window there where you focus on something very specific that connects to Saturn, Mars. And of course, there is a reception between Mars and Saturn. And remember, I've said with receptions, I've said this several times, receptions basically amplify the energy of the two planets in question and what they are trying to achieve. In this case, it's a sextile, so it's an opportunity. A reception adds to the opportunity, right? Because it adds to the nature of the sextile. As we move forward, Mars is trine Jupiter. Again, that's so the sextile to Saturn, the trine to Jupiter pretty much happens simultaneously, right? More or less. Amazing aspects. So, you know, these are really amazing opportunities. Trines and sextiles, which are support from the divine source creation to all things. They are support from the universe. That's what trines and sextiles are. They, you know, a trine enables us to work with something, whatever it is that we are doing, in a manner of no resistance. How wonderful is that? When we can have moments, little pockets, little windows, where there is a sense of naturally, organically going with that flow and really being in touch with it, in tune with it, and gaining the most out of that opportunity without resistance. Well, you know, that's a wonderful thing. There's a lot of great things that can come out of that, very simply put. As we move forward, Mars, well, it had a conjunction to Mercury, so you can think about that those days. It's going to Mars Mercury is a difficult combination in my opinion, because that's basically, it's a lot of different things, but one thing that comes up very obviously is conflicts in the written and spoken word, essentially, right? So that might play in a huge way with worldly events, let's say. Mars is going to form a trine to Uranus, and it's pretty much within orb there, but the exactness of it is here. Mars at 19 degrees of Capricorn, trine Uranus at 19 degrees of Taurus. That's a very favorable aspect again. So Mars is picking up a lot of help along the way with planets that are really, really important. Saturn's about our reality, the construct of our reality, the backbone, our ability to commit and be disciplined to things. It can be karma, it can be the timing of things and so forth. And Uranus is, you know, how we're going to integrate our own individual authentic self into our desires, Mars. And it comes through with ease, with a sense of support, with the ability to be able to do that. Sometimes you're trying to do something and you are feeling like everything is sort of working against you. You know, people are resisting you, people are blocking you, as it were, right? No one really does that to us, but we can have that sense at times, right, for different reasons. And what I'm saying here is that a Mars trine Uranus is the ability to naturally align with what you authentically can do with that Mars energy that really aligns with your personal path, basically. So there's really great aspects. But moving forward, just say something. Yeah. Okay. So the Mars-Venus conjunction happens in Aquarius. Before that, of course, we have the Sun-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, which is a big, big event. It's a big deal. And I I spoke about this, I think, from early last year. I briefly mentioned it, and I have mentioned it subsequently as well, because I'm just so fascinated by this particular alignment, which is this one here, this alignment here. And to get Mars and Venus exact, we just need to go to the 22nd of February. So, you know, Mars, Venus, Pluto, all in Aquarius. We've never seen this before, or we may have hundreds of years ago, but we certainly haven't seen it in our lifetime. And we need to, you know, look at that in the context of where we are historically, where we are in the process of evolution. The last time this occurred, which I'm not sure exactly when that was, I'd have to look into that. I know that the Sun being at 0 Aquarius and Pluto being at 0 Aquarius hasn't occurred for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That's a fact. But I don't know when this particular alignment last occurred. I do know, however, it has not occurred in our lifetime. So even if it had occurred, you know, 247 years ago, let's say, which I don't think it did, but let's just say that it did. Well, if we were living a particular life in this world at that time, our soul was evolving through, you know, something very different to what we are evolving through at the moment, right? So we always are looking at the planets in the context of our current soul's evolution, right? That's how we find a sense of meaning around it and what we are here to do, you know, basically on that soul level. So I'm going to come back and speak to this you know, with a lot of passion and intensity, I would say, because it is Pluto. And, you know, there's going to be some wonderful things about this, and there's going to be some really heavy, dark things about this as well. There is no question about that. However, I will come back and speak to that in due time. So I hope today's presentation has given you some things to think about relative to the transit of Mars in Capricorn, and just the importance of Mars in Capricorn over the next few weeks, because it is the ruler of the North Node, which is the direction we're heading in, because we have solar and lunar eclipses in Aries, Libra. Mars rules Aries, because Mars is invisible still and will be invisible until March for New York, USA. For those reasons, the journey of Mars has implications into a trajectory moving forward that I think is really worth considering with the position that we take in it while it transits through Mars. So I'll see you guys very, very soon. Sending much love to all souls, to everybody, to every single one of you, and sending extra love actually to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and also our brothers and sisters in Israel as well. Okay, much love. Bye for now.